Welcome back to the Armchair Attorney podcast. That's right, we're here, we're back, we're live. I am Matthew Leffler, the Armchair Attorney, a real-life lawyer and an adjunct law professor at Michigan State University College of Law. Go green. And this is where you, if you're watching or listening, would scream back, go white. I assume you've already done that, so thank you for doing that. This is another one of our wonderful episodes where we talk to the industry leaders that are shaping our supply chain. It's not slowing down, at least certainly not in terms of the nature of the Internet of Things. This is the stuff that gets me very excited. And before we bring on our very special guest, Beth Young from Velocity, I have to say a couple of shout outs to some really interesting folks I had a chance to meet over the last couple of days. Yesterday, if you were in St. Louis, Missouri, I had the opportunity to speak at the Transportation Club of St. Louis. I got to deliver the keynote speech of the evening, and it was the 118th annual dinner for the Transportation Club. It used to be called the Traffic Club. People don't think of traffic the way that they used to in the old days. And it was an incredible night. Over 80 people attended. We got a chance to talk about our supply chain that all of us find ourselves in, from shippers to brokers to motor carriers and everybody in between. I cannot tell you enough. If you are on the fence about participating or joining something like a traffic club, I highly recommend you check it out. For most people, there's no cost to be a member. You might pay to go to some of the events that they do, but it is an incredible place to meet professionals in this industry. And of course, I have to say thank you to my friends that help make this thing possible. First up, Genlogs. They have cameras, lights, cameras, action. Ryan Joyce, what's going on? If you want to know what's happening in freight intelligence, you want to know Genlogs. This company has deployed cameras all across the nation's highways, monitoring trucks, trailers, and everything in between. And this where people are finding more information about where is my truck, where is my trailer, and combating fraud and cargo theft. I tell many insurers that I work with, if you do not know who Genlogs is, you probably should. You probably should. Go to genlogs.io and take a look at a demo of that technology. It's really interesting. I'm telling you, the future is here. The future is coming. And of course, my friends at DAT, Dial a Truck, since 1978. 1978. DAT has been helping motor carriers find and discover freight, but it's so much more. The folks at DAT have invested in their platform with things like Convoy and Outgo and Trucker Tools. It's incredible, the network that they're building for the most trusted marketplace in freight and technology. And of course, as you all well know, I was the temporary guest host for the Proof of Delivery podcast, the pod within a pod. And though it was only episode 9, I do feel that I did a good job for Mr. Ken Adamo and Kerry Jablonski. Again, I know they'll come back. I know they don't need me all the time, but I hope you're able to check out that podcast with Chad Olison, the CEO and founder of AVRL or Avril. It's not pronounced Avril. He corrects me every time that I say that, but I do it on purpose because it makes him a little bit frustrated with me. Now, let's get to what we're here to talk about today. I fundamentally believe in the connected supply chain. Every single thing that is promised to us with regards to innovation and technology is predicated on the devices working and being installed properly, and when they fail, being replaced as quickly as possible. That is the nature of our supply chain. It has advanced so quickly and so fast, and we are now learning about this every single day. And if you are trying to connect your supply chains from inside the warehouse into the yard, onto the asset, and eventually to the receiver, you need to know the company Velocity. Out of Kansas City, it's an incredible business. It's done enormous things in the supply chain, working with some of the biggest brands on the planet. And today, I have the really great privilege to have Beth Young joining us. Beth's background is phenomenal. I'm going to let her walk you through it, but just to give you some key highlights, we're talking WyoTech. We're talking American Trucking Associations. We're talking so much more. And Beth will be joining us, actually, looks like right now. Beth, how are you?
Hi, Matthew. I'm great. Thank you for
Happy
having
Friday.
me here. Well, happy Friday to you. Your new haircut is looking sharp.
I tried my best. When I go out in public, I'm told, like, you got to clean yourself up because sometimes I'm a little bit rough around the edges. So For those who don't know you, let me ask this question. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, good question. Let's just dive right in.
That's
I
right.
appreciate this. Okay, so I think at a fundamental level, you mentioned it, Beth Young, daughter to Dale and Janet Young. I am the very short big sister to Michael Young, who has, when he showed up on this planet, became my first best friend and has always been larger than life to me, as well as Joshua Young, who will teach a master class in priorities.
Oh, there you go.
Um, the life partner to Troy Cheney, who's doing some really incredible things disrupting training and education. So, if anyone wants to know about that, I would recommend getting to know that person and connect to that person. I showed up live and in person here about 41 years ago in Billings, Montana, and
Oh,
have
there you
been a rolling stone looking for a home ever since then. But once I got to Austin, Texas, and felt that humidity and that heat, I knew I'd never be going north again. And that is where home is now.
Okay, so I was taught. So I mentioned Chad Olison. Chad is actually based in Austin, and I was in Austin about a year ago. A year ago yesterday, when I was there a year ago yesterday, it was 105 degrees, and that is not meant for human habitation. Is Austin a million degrees today, or is it somewhat more pleasant?
It is more pleasant, but I think a baseline, like a fundamental number, should start at 105 and humid.
I'm not built for that. I have
Oh, it's so
limited surface
extreme.
area. I need like snow and ice. I need whatever temperature is outside, 20 degrees cooler. That's what I'd like. It might be 40 degrees. Give me 20 degrees cooler. I'll be all right. Okay. So my question now is like, how did you get into the supply chain? Like, how did you get into this incredible industry that you find yourself in?
Well, once you get in, as anyone that's listening or watching this knows that once you're in, you can't get out.
There's no
And
escape.
I'm so grateful for that. So I was working in that clunky space of healthcare for years, for decades, and jumped out of that when I started seeing so much regulation hit healthcare. And it was just hard to be really innovative because of this other system called insurance payments. And so I was like pretty much looking at all of the different industries: housing, transportation, food and beverage, hospitality. And I thought, you know what? In transportation, one person can start a business and be successful. And
Absolutely.
I was like, I want to get involved in that. And then I was recruited out of healthcare and over to Wyotech.
So I love WyoTech. So WyoTech is one of the, for those who don't know, is one of the most prestigious schools in my mind for training diesel mechanics. Now I'm sure they do a lot of other things, but like their specialty that I know them for is getting some of the most talented technicians in the country who are recruited all across the US. Like if you came from WyoTech, like you are somebody who Old Dominion is calling, FedEx is calling, UPS is calling. So what did you do at WyoTech?
So I got to work with really lifting Wyotech 2.0 as it came back online. So they went through some struggles with kind of the back of the house organization, and ended up being in a place where they were teaching out the remaining 7 students, and at a time
Oh, wow.
over thousands of students. And so it ended up kind of moving downward towards 7. They were able to capture and essentially keep those students on the books while learning in order to maintain their accreditation, which then helped with some investment of private individuals in the state of Wyoming to really lift that back up. You may remember Wyotech had a lot of campuses throughout the country. They
Yeah.
are down to one in the little high town of Laramie, Wyoming now, expanding and growing. And so to kind of come back to your original question, what I got to do at Wyotech was help start programs that went into high schools to encourage students who are just kind of looking for the next thing, but that next thing might not be for your education. It's
That's
not for
right.
everyone, but that marketed really well years ago. And now people are like, hey, maybe that 4-year degree isn't for me. And I want to be outside. I want to be working with my hands. I want to do something different. And so not only was it to high school students, it was also to like the 30, 40, 50 generation who are looking for some like next phase in life.
Absolutely. I will just pull the thread a little bit more on this going to the high schools and helping people understand what jobs are out there. There's a lot of disruption in the industry, whether it's automation or all sorts of different AI things. As of right now, you cannot automate a human being turning a wrench. It is one of these jobs that is absolutely essential. Everyone needs a skilled technician, and we can debate whether there's a truck driver shortage. I don't think that there is. I think there's a retention issue and other issues, but there is absolutely a shortage of heavy duty techs. And it's because we have not gone to high schools and said, this is a great career path for you. I give one quick anecdote. I was talking to a customer of mine many years ago who was trying to hire a day shift mechanic in the Quad Cities, day shift mechanic. $48 an hour, and they couldn't find anybody. So like there's good jobs in repairing commercial vehicles. How long were you at Wyotech for?
Oh, I was at Wyotech for probably a couple years. It wasn't as
Okay.
long as I now as I reflect on it, wasn't as long as I thought. However, living in Wyoming for 20 years, I mean, it's a sister company to everyone that's in the state.
Wyoming is a beautiful and absolutely inhospitable state. I love going there. I love visiting it, but it is so daunting how big those mountains are and how few people there are. But the stars are something out of this world when you're someplace like Wyoming.
They are. And then you drive up to Laramie, Wyoming, and you're already 7,200 feet into the like closer. So, it's a really great experience.
Okay, so after Wyotech, what do you help build the program, get it revitalized? You look next. What do you go to next?
Well, another key person of one of 500,000 in the entire state is Mr. Chris Spear. So
Okay.
Wyoming, in its nice, tidy square space, Wyoming knows everyone in Wyoming. Long
Yeah.
roads, small town, and Chris Spear has some property in Wyoming. So over time, you get to know one another. And he said he asked me a question on Easter Sunday once about the roadways, and I spent hours going on and on about how some of the potholes could swallow my entire Mini Cooper in the US. And I road bike
Absolutely.
as much as I possibly can. And I'm like, gosh, it would be great to have just like a nice road. So
Mhm.
after nerding out on roadways and quality of roads in the United States and traffic and congestion and everything on that level, yeah, he said, "Would you consider coming over to ATA?" And I brought that interest over to ATA.
Okay, so for those who don't know Chris Beer, and if you're listening or watching this podcast, you probably should. He's the current president and CEO of the American Trucking Associations, the big organization that is the big advocate for motor carriers of any size, but it's probably the most well-known trucking organization out there. Was he the leader of that organization when you first met him?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Even when we first met too, yeah, he was the CEO of ATA.
So just like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had the Deputy General Counsel Pam Bracher on the podcast, and we got a chance to talk about some of like her experience and kind of the work within ATA and some of the stuff that they get really excited about. We'll probably come back to that in a minute. But how long were you at ATA, and what did you do at ATA?
Gosh, I got to spend so much time running around the entire country, talking to state trucking associations, trucking companies in general, getting to know like what are their pain points, what keeps them up at night. And one thing that I love so much about this connected industry of 3 million people is how welcoming everyone is in the trucking logistics space. So I covered a region west of the Mississippi. So I know a lot more about trucking issues and the trucking names and folks that are that direction. But gosh, pack up the car, set out for a road trip, and go visit as many people as I could in 6 weeks' time.
I love my experience with the American Trucking Associations because I was always a member of the Technology and Maintenance Council. So we would go to the annual TMC conference. We'd have our booth set up. We'd talk to people. And what I always loved was you could have the fiercest competitors like, UPS and FedEx or Scion, Old Dominion, and they're all on the same page. They're all like, look, we're in the tribe of supply chain and transportation. We want to know what the best methods for maintenance are, what the best things to buy for our trucks and our trailers, how we keep our drivers safer. And even though they're fierce competitors, they really do have this kind of shared mentality of we need to be better at safely delivering freight on time and undamaged. So how long are you at ATA for? So you're traveling, you're meeting all these different state associations. How long do you stick around with ATA?
I was probably there 3 years.
Okay.
Was probably there 3 years, yeah, and I love
And
what you're saying about how everyone can just be such great friends, and I've been in those rooms where people are, like, duking it out around the board table, and then outside they walk, and it's, like, off to their kid's baseball game, and it's like, "Oh, that's
well,
something I wanna be a part of," like, that's neat.
I learned this mentality from my father. So my dad was a roadway guy back in 1976. So 4 years before deregulation. And in those days, there were really three trucking companies. There was Yellow, Roadway, and Consolidated Freight, or CF. And my father would kind of look at it and say, well, like CF and Yellow competed to see who was number two and number three because Roadway was always the best. And I understand his mentality there. But you would see those people in those organizations, and they'll fight fiercely on the RFP. They'll fight fiercely for a customer. But when it's all said and done, like we're all in the same business and it's brutal, it's hard. And we have this shared mentality of like, we don't do it because it's easy. We do it
Right.
because it's hard. And nothing really worth doing should ever be easy. So what I love the story that I've heard so far is like you're helping solve these problems that are part of this transportation industry. With the need for skilled mechanics and finding ways to get people access to education that is able to transcend just needing to get a degree, but to provide for their families with the skill sets and the aptitude that they have. Get to the American Trucking Association, is the largest trucking organization in the country, working with the local ones, saying, hey, here's how we can help you. Here's how we can better support you as a member. And what happens next? Where do you go after this?
Yeah, so that's where the Powell brothers show up, and we met each other through ATA events, industry events, and out and about. And then every time I was in Kansas City, stop in and see them, have a great meal together, talk, dream and scheme, talk about what could be done. And over time, they asked, "Would you come over? Would you come over?" And I said, "All right, like." Let's go kind of move out of that like policy side, that advocacy side, which is
Absolutely.
such noble work. And it's like, okay, now I have that kind of piece of it. Let me move over into like maybe directly playing the game a little bit more and
Absolutely.
still maintaining those same connections, those same relationships that I'd made earlier at ATA, but bring those over into a conversation with, okay, now like let's put some of this in action. Like let's build something. And it was like, all right, Velocity, let's go.
Well, I think like I love this transition because what makes Velocity so interesting to me is I look and the company's been in business now for over 30 years, but like the last few, let's say 10 years have been so transformational in this industry. So one of the really big changes was the ELD mandate. So everybody who's moving freight over the road had to adopt this in-cab technology to track hours of service. That's evolved to cameras, both facing out and facing in. Everything is connected. The supply chain is no longer a bunch of silos, or some people still have silos, but the best in the world are breaking those silos down. So what have you been doing within Velocity? What are you finding so interesting helping clients discover solutions to their supply chain problems?
Well, I think that we could take so many different paths down this answer, which is great, not only for Velocity, but like what I've noticed in working with various companies is they say, at one point we were a bakery, and then years went by and we became a trucking company, even though they're still now moving bread.
That's right.
And now they're like, we go from bakery to trucking company to now we are a technology company who happens to sell bread. And I think that's just a really great way to button up what is happening in the industry. I mean, 30 years ago when Velocity got it started, you just said that, but 30 years ago, Windows 95 was like the thing, the hot item. The internet
Absolutely.
was just getting attention. Like it was 95, and a lot of people have said like 95 was the year everything changed. But that was only 30 years ago. And like in comes Velocity as a major player. I think it was like Beanie Babies, the number one toy in the country.
One of the
So
things one thing like the story I have with Velocity, so like long ago in the before times and for my time in the industry, we actually shared similar customers. My father's company, Outsourced Fleet Services, and Velocity, because there was this new company, new-ish company, and it started off as a company called Roadway Package Systems, RPS, and it was Roadway, the old Motor Care's version of a parcel delivery company, but it didn't have the same labor model as UPS for a lot of reasons. And that company became Caliber, and Caliber became FedEx Ground. So we were the maintenance. My father's company was the maintenance provider for Ground, and Velocity was out there installing different systems inside the trucks for the different contractors and FedEx itself. And what I love about this is like technology is the enabling tool for growth. Like so many people look at technology and go, well, I have to have it because the customer says I have to, or I have to have it because the government says I have to. But there are companies that look and say, I need this because I have to grow. And the only way I can grow is through measuring things. I can't manage anything unless I measure it. So you've kind of traced this pathway of how do you help not just a school trying to get more technicians into the field grow, or helping one of the most important trucking organizations grow. It's about how do you help fleets and manufacturers and warehousing companies? How do you help them grow? And that's really, really interesting.
And to kind of piggyback on that, one of the things that I like doing I like doing philosophically is connecting people. Like that,
Absolutely.
I absolutely love that. So then it's like, okay, well, I can take that same word connect, and now I can work with it in the technology space over at Velocity. And that's fundamentally what Velocity is and does. They're like, bring us your most precious thing, which to most people is their company that
Mhm.
they lose sleep over and miss vacations and the baseball games and so forth for, because they're working on their company and their culture and delivering with their customers. Well, if you can't track, trace, or find your freight, it's not going to work really well for the customer. The culture is going to be a disaster, and the company isn't going to be around very long. So we get to help work in all of those veins by sitting at the table with someone. And the savvy companies know to like include Velocity early on, because if we sit at the table together, we have long-term conversations about, and long-term being maybe 12 months,
Yeah.
because technology is changing so fast. But it's like we need to build frameworks that allow us to be very adaptive and nimble later on as that technology changes. But until we know kind of what the ideas are, we can't really help, or and kind of where those business goals are. And that's just something that, like, the talent on the team is willing to go spend time sitting at the table.
I couldn't agree with you more. What I love about how like when you talk about connecting people, it's about removing friction in the process. And if you're trying to maximize the value and the efficiency of your supply chain and just everything in between, you have to connect these things. And ultimately, sometimes you just need to know the right person. Like who's the person at ATA you need to go to get this thing, or who's the person at WildTech you need to go to get this program put together.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, and I want to kind of like uh, jump back to a thing that I was talking with Pam at ATA about a couple weeks ago. So her background is building up these claims departments, helping people like US Express or Knight Swift manage accidents and big claims that come through. And I have seen over the last like every couple of days, maybe you see videos come out of drivers backing into trucks, smashing them, trying to pretend like they got rear-ended. And the days of like of driver outward facing camera like being optional are gone. Like there are now great sets of data that say if you don't have these things, you are exposing yourself to just crazy amounts of risk. So do you help your clients like understand what technology is available to help them mitigate the risk?
Oh, 100%. No, we're technology agnostic. I think that's something that I probably should have led with. We work with every technology out on the market and have since that Windows 95 showed up 30 years ago. We are working with every technology that's out there. We've seen it grow. We've seen some leave the market. We've seen new ones come in. So our role is to be a full-time like technology Sherpa when it comes to the industry. One of the things that, as you just said, we start seeing like driver facing, the road facing, driver facing cameras. Now we're seeing more rear view cameras. Now
Yeah,
we're starting to see
absolutely.
360 cameras. Pretty soon, I expect there's going to be more and more people enter the market that are looking at that like almost bird's eye view, like kind of that top down, complete I mean, the 360 covers a particular area, but then having that top-down coverage, I
Absolutely.
have it in my passenger vehicle, but it's pretty soon going to be on everything else. And one of the things that I think is like so critical to this camera technology, assuming that it's up and running and working at its optimal level, is that that is what keeps people out of harm's way in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting because like with the phrase that people in the industry hear is this thing called a nuclear verdict, and that nuclear verdict isn't a legal term. It's a term kind of created to describe a phenomenon, much like describing a planet, like we talked about before we went live. But a nuclear verdict is understood as a verdict that's over $10 million, and then we have a new thing people keep talking about called a thermonuclear verdict. That's when it's over $100 million. And at this day and age, most motor carriers are going to have some claim against them at some point. And it is almost impossible to go out into this industry and not have at least outward facing cameras. But as you think about what other companies are adopting are driver facing cameras. And I guess there's certainly some concerns with people with privacy and just not having someone monitoring them. But if you have a driver facing camera and you see them pick up their cell phone, you know how to teach them or coach them. You can start measuring and managing. If you want to avoid these massive verdicts, which people are trying to do, you have to invest in the technology, because if you don't, you're gonna get smashed. It's gonna be brutal.
mhm, mhm. And then it doesn't stop there. It keeps going. So it's like we have these camera solutions. Well, what about fuel efficiency? There's a
Mm.
lot that the OEMs are doing already from the R&D side of just like building the truck itself. However, there's other things that can be put onto the truck, that can be put onto the trailer. Someone has to go turn that wrench, as you said earlier. Like,
Absolutely.
that has
It's
to get
about
done.
deploying. And even when the
Yes.
devices fail, like, okay, you might invest a bunch of money and say, great, we did this thing, it's going to be great. But when one of these things fails, how fast can you get someone out there to fix it? If you don't have the resources or the know-how, it could take a
Mhm.
week, 2 weeks. And that's not acceptable. It's got to be fixed fast.
Absolutely. And then what happens when you don't even know that it's failed? Then you're just
Mm.
out there driving along, assuming that it's working and working optimally because it's hanging on the windshield, or
It
it's up
looks like it's
there.
working.
Yeah, it looks like it's working. And then there's other times where the camera is working perfectly, but the windshield got smashed. And so there's also these other kind of like side, like these little things that hang in the periphery that someone needs to go out there and service to initially deploy and then keep an eye on.
This is why I love field service. Like we talked about this with Wyotech initially, like training mechanics. We talked about ATA, but like when I look back at all of this together, it's about how do you enable qualified technicians to go do productive work. And everything in the supply chain is increasingly connected, and there's still human involvement. You need to have someone turning the wrench and having someone who can replace the camera, test it, calibrate it, whatever that looks like. But the future, Beth, is robots. And I want to talk to you about drones, because I hear that drones are coming. I see the things at Walmart dropping packages in people's yards, maybe with little parachutes. I don't know what is happening in the world of drones, and how are you in that space? I'd love to understand that.
Oh my goodness, you hit on a great topic. I could talk to you about drones and dark skies all day long. So, so, imagine being responsible for a community, whether you're a city manager, city planner, county commissioner, whatever that might look like, or perhaps the governor of the entire state. But say that's your responsibility, is to maintain the health and safety of that. What happens when someone in your community goes missing? What
Mm.
happens when your drinking water may have been contaminated and there isn't time to get someone to go out and test that water to make sure that it's safe for your community? What happens when you need to get into a facility and you don't know the life safety situation inside of that? So you don't need to send your first responders into something that you already know is at a high risk. What happens when you need to find out where the source of that wildfire is? This is what drones are going to start doing for not only like, and so like let's put it into the connected supply chain, but this is what drones are going to start doing for municipalities.
Yeah.
I'm bullish on this. We think of robots as like these really fancy human looking things that are picking up cat food and moving it
That's what I
around.
think
And
about.
yeah, like, and would I
Changing the
love
diapers of
something
my
like that?
twins.
That, I mean, I get home tonight at 9 o'clock, and it'd be great to have like some robot maybe making some ceviche. That would be
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Like
Uh,
Data from Star Trek.
you got it. But that, we're so far away from that. Right now,
Oh,
like most households have the Roomba, and we still are having robots in our household, and we don't think of them the same way. So
absolutely.
back to the drone thing. I really believe that drones are going to be as standard for a municipality's life safety as an ambulance is. It's
Mm,
going to be that first line of defense. There's folks at Velocity that are spending so much time trying to figure out how to make this practical along with other technology partners. But like Todd and Casey and the company, like they'll spend all day long talking to you about it. But like a
interesting.
great example is in the state of Wyoming, there aren't blood products that are available to someone who has a trauma. So if blood needs to be, it has to be flown in. Drones are the only way that that's going to work. And so when I think about the future of robotics and health and safety, drones are that first line of defense for it. Right now, the use case tends to lie in like dense like communities, highly
Mhm.
populated areas, the New York cities of the world. Of course, great place to have drones. But what happens when there's miles and miles and miles of space to cover to get to that one person?
Or finding a missing hiker, finding someone who went off the trail. I mean, there's we're going back to what you first began the story with, like your background, like in the medical world. Like my fundamental thesis, everything is supply chain. No matter what job someone has, they don't realize like you're already part of what we do. You just don't want to acknowledge
Right.
it. And like, and
Correct.
even for you and me, it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
we could get out of supply chain. Like, no, we can't. There's everything is tied to where is the thing that I want. But
Yes.
the problems we have in society and in supply chain generally are not new problems. They're problems that have been around forever. It's just the technology to solve them has improved. And now the technology becomes more accessible. So the use case for drones is incredible. Are you working with people today saying, hey, this is how we can start building a solution to supplement your emergency response systems to have something like a drone that can go do these activities?
100%. That is what we're doing. And I
That's
think
amazing.
that, I mean, that in the trajectory is tremendous. Like that is something that we have so much opportunity, but regulation has changed to where this is now possible.
Mhm.
Back in 2019, when I was really focused on getting blood moved around the state of Wyoming using drones, regulation just wouldn't allow for it. Drone had to be in line of sight. Well,
Oh, that's right. Okay, so that if could you have another drone following that drone with like a platoon of drones and each one watching the other? No, probably not.
probably. That would have been a
Maybe,
really,
okay.
I it probably would have been really, but now there's so much less expensive.
Mhm.
We build, Velocity also does a lot of fabricating, which I think is like really awesome. Had I
The
known
lab is
about like the
amazing. Anyone who's
skill
in
of
Kansas City
welding,
should yeah, anyone who's in the lab should go to if you're in Kansas City, go check out the Velocity
yes,
Lab. It's amazing. It's amazing.
yes, and it's like a museum tour, and it changes every single week, like new installations every week. So within the drone space, like we discovered, okay, if you're in a really rural area, like say testing water at a reservoir out in the middle of nowhere, but a drone needs like a little home, looks like a little pizza oven. It needs a little home. And the drone can go in there and even now self-repair before it flies
Wow.
out on another mission. However, for little things, but there still needs to be human technician that shows up that does ongoing maintenance so that when that drone gets deployed, it knows exactly where to go and everyone around it has confidence that that drone is going to work the way that it needs to.
This is what just you've hit on one of my favorite topics, which is preventative maintenance. And I always throw these statistics out because it depresses most people, and I want to depress everyone who's listening. The national out of service rate for commercial vehicles is over 22%, meaning that for every truck and trailer you inspect that's running right now, 1 in 5 would be unsafe at any speed. And that is something we should all be kind of like, oh, that's interesting because I use the analogy if I'm a grocery store selling milk and I have 5 gallons of milk, but one is unsafe, you'd say, Matthew, I would prefer not to buy any milk from you. And I'd say that's not the option because that's the only thing you can choose from. With this drone technology, I think your point on maintenance is super critical because this is not something you're gonna be able to find very easily. So if it goes off and it fails and it's in the middle of nowhere, you've kind of lost that device. You've lost that thing. So you have to be proactive, not just in identifying the right technology, but making sure you have a program behind it to support. So the unplanned happens very limited, and the planned is the most thing you do prescriptively.
Yes, and it could work for a lot less glamorous search and rescue sorts of things. I mean, it can go out and just survey land, look at oil and gas pipelines, make sure that the welds are good on different things. I mean, there's so many
Absolutely.
applications, and now regulation has teed it up into a place where it can actually start functioning a little bit more. I think sometimes when we think about drones, we think of like, what's the Hunger Games and like this little chapstick coming down in some type of parachute, like you alluded to earlier.
Exactly.
There are so many more applications.
So when you are helping a client like talk about the dash cameras, do you find out like what other technologies they have? How do you marry different systems that they have? If they have like one set of tools in the warehouse, one set of tools in the trucks, how do you bridge the gap?
Oh, that is exactly what we do is bridge that gap. That's why we are here. One of the best places that Velocity can get involved in is around that table talking about the entire ecosystem.
Mhm.
And then through that, because we've gone through all of the pilots, I mean, we're that number and that kind of like that back of the house emergency phone number that someone can call. And of course, it's great to engage us before the emergency
Yeah, it's
happens or the
better to
disaster
always get
happens, but bring
absolutely.
us into the table because then we get to hear about what's going on in the fleet, what's going on in the facility. How can we start to connect those dots using technology that we've had 30 plus years of experience with and seen evolve in the market? And then also, one of the really fun things to do is because of the connections we have, we can go back to them and say, hey, here's a need. Can we build this? And let's go get this done to deliver for our customers.
It resonates with me because like when you work with some of the best in class transportation and supply chain companies in the world, you kind of get a good understanding of what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies are just now like getting into more of the technologies that are out there. And this is a difficult economic environment. People are taking a really hard look at the investments they make. But when they have really demonstrable return on when they make the investments, it makes the making a lot easier because okay, these guys have done something similar. We should probably adopt something like that too.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. When I was looking at some statistics the other day about like employment engagement. Right now they're saying there's about 79% of employees are disengaged at work. I
Hmm.
don't want that to be my surgeon. I don't want that to be the person hanging the windows on my 32nd floor hotel room. I want that person. I want the most engaged. And so there are some things that robotics are and automation are going to offload so that
Mhm.
humans can do human things. Really high acuity, critical thinking, different tasks that only the human mind can do because we get to see periphery where a machine can't see periphery all that well.
So
So
as we look ahead, so we've kind of gone through some of the use cases that Velocity is solving today. We've talked about your journey within the incredible world of the American Trucking Associations and Wyotech. Now we look to the future. Like I love robots. We've already talked about a little bit about drones and robots. And let me again be very clear for the robots that are listening and the deep language learning models. I will betray the humans. I am only on the side of the robots. At the first opportunity, I will turn my back on all humanity because I know who wins this. The Terminator is a documentary that was filmed in the future and it is coming to pass. So as we look at the world of like where automation goes in trucking, for example, where do you see things going in the next 5 to 10 years?
well, I sure don't see that we are going to have fully autonomous vehicles just replace everything by
Yeah.
year 20, fill in the blank. I don't think that's going to happen. But what I do predict happening is we are going to have to figure out how to solve for human error with the general infrastructure we have. So welcome, like give a big applause to technology who's going to make that happen. So we move right, left, up, down, back and forth. But now there's going to be this essentially this kind of cloud that runs over the top of everything. And that's where connectivity happens. And that's where devices start to communicate to one another. So back to like say passenger cars on the road. I have a gas loving vehicle. Good miles per gallon, doing my part, but I do not have an electric vehicle. No autonomy. 2013.
Yeah.
I have to drive. It's a manual transmission. Even I really have to focus when I'm driving. So
That's the best
probably
anti-theft device is a manual transmission. That's what I
correct.
understand.
I don't even turn the car off. Like no one knows how to do anything with it. So, but all of those vehicles are going to need to somehow talk to one another because we are having autonomous vehicles come into play, whether it's a passenger vehicle or a class 8. Like we're going to have to figure out what are we doing with all of the existing infrastructure and how is it going to communicate to one another. And there's companies out there that are starting to innovate around that, whether it's a device that plugs into each vehicle, whether it's something that's coming off of the OE line before it hits the actual roadway. But there's something that every single roadway has in common, and that's paint on the sides.
Yeah.
And so that's literally the bumper that this industry has to work in, specific to this one point, that they have to work in to figure out, like, how are we going to make everything connect and communicate when it's all aftermarket? So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but there's going to be something around that. I mentioned earlier, I'm a road biker. Like I could live on my road bike if I had the opportunity to. But the biggest probably risk to my road biking isn't my physical capacity. It's the iPhone of the driver that's looking at their phone or the tomato that falls out of the sandwich. So these are things that all of a sudden, like technologies that are going into vehicles or perhaps my bike for all I know, these are what's going to be controlled for. So I think that's one of many things that we're going to start seeing in the future.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think the innovation around autonomy will maybe someday lead to a fully autonomous with no remote operator, but realistically, it's about sensors to help make the operator safer. It's about technologies to offset distraction or track for distraction. And if you, as a fleet owner or a warehouse company, are looking at your liability verdicts or your cases under review or your X modifier on your workers' comp, and you're not making investments in technology that helps prevent those things, or at least track those things, you are not going to be sustainable. You will not survive in this environment. It takes one bad accident and you are toast. We've seen so many companies over the last couple of months go bankrupt, not because the market is bad, though the market is bad. They've gone out because the verdicts are too substantial. And so if you think that you're going to sit back and wait for a few more months or a few more years because I don't know that I really want to do that tech just yet, that's a calculus that is maybe not what you necessarily want to do. Now, as we kind of get closer to the end of this conversation, Beth, I'm kind of curious, like, where do you see, like, for you in the next couple of months? Like, are you going to any trade shows? Are you going to any places? Like, where are you going to be? Where do you find more people to connect with? Because this is what this industry is all about. It's about networking and getting to know the right people and talk about what it is that you see happening in the supply chain.
Isn't that it? Like it's all about connections. So while I'm not at a show, I hope that anyone would reach out on LinkedIn.
We'll put your link here in the show notes. Absolutely, we'll definitely do that.
Yep. Okay, and I respond. So give me a couple days, but I will respond. I think that is becoming somewhat of a lost art, just culturally, is that we're very connected, but we're not actually connected. So I will give everyone the promise that I will connect. I will be at Tank Truck. I will be at MCNE, ATA's MCNE show later on. And a few of the conversations that we're going to have is really about driver well-being and what we can do inside the truck and trailer and kind of the ecosystem around that to support drivers. I find that fascinating. I think that, if I ever really want to know what's going on in the economics of the world, sitting down and having a meal with a driver at a truck stop, no better education.
Absolutely.
I learned so much.
Driving a truck, it's so interesting to think about this. Like right now, there's over 550,000 motor carriers, about 25,000 brokers, millions of men and women that are getting up every single day and safely delivering freight on time and undamaged. And it's difficult even in the best circumstances. And it's a dangerous job. It's an essential job. And it's fascinating to see how much the industry has shifted over the last few years, because we are now entering an age where everybody who's driving, most of the people driving trucks that are our age or younger, they're technology natives. Like they've been with their phones, they've been with the technology their entire lives. And so when people were initially skeptical of ELDs or cameras, now it's more like a normal practice to see the technology coming in and augmenting the driver. Do you see like autonomous trucks like at an intrastate level, so just locally, like Houston to Dallas, or do you think we're going to see over the road applications at some point soon?
Yes, and I think soon is like 36 months. So there's
I don't disagree.
already,
I
yeah,
don't disagree.
I mean, I think that I think we're like right on the edge of an automation revolution.
Absolutely.
That's a Beth Young opinion and thought, but I think that that's right where we are. There already are autonomous trucks driving on certain lanes between cities. I mean, gosh, have you driven through the salt flats in Nevada? Like
No,
Utah area? Oh boy. I mean, great environment. The huge signs
that's
like the size
incredible.
of card tables that say if you're tired, pull over because it's so desolate.
Yeah.
And I think
Well,
there's going to be great use case there.
I to build off that, like when I was at the Transportation Club of St. Louis, like that was the thrust of my conversation with people, was that I think we were living through a new era. So before like the 50s and 60s, we had the era of containerization, this adoption of this uniform technology to move things across the world, and that was profoundly impactful for everything that we do. It went from $5 per ton to unload to like 15 to 20 cents per ton. It's a manifestly different world. 1980 saw deregulation and the ability for motor carriers. I mean, I let these numbers are fun, but in 1980 there were 18,000 motor carriers. Today there's 550,000. It's a different world than it was before. And now we're in the beginning, or at least somewhere along the path of this new age of automation. And you never know you're living in a historical moment until you're no longer in that moment. You look back and go, that was crazy. But
Yeah.
for the men and women who are in the supply chain now are learning about this now. This is a profound time, and we're not going to know exactly how impactful it is until sometime in the future. But I'm with you. I think this is a new age, and it goes
Yeah.
slowly at first, and then very quickly when it gets moving.
Yep. In healthcare, it was always like a title and then itis afterwards. There was all bronchitis, arthritis, and it meant that there was like something wrong. I think that the way we spell that in the supply chain is time. And if
Yeah.
we let too much time go by, I mean, you're like Uber yourself before your code act is such a like applicable way to think about this. Like we have to start talking about the technologies that are maybe missing. And one thing that I've noticed, especially lately, for whatever reason lately, is that a lot of people don't like to ask questions because they don't like knowing or sharing that they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I
And
guess
so,
like, to
go
go
ahead.
back, I'm thinking like when you were with Wyotech, like this is the thing I love about mechanics. Like the mechanic of tomorrow is being taught today, and they're going to have to understand how these systems relate. And if you don't have a human being in the vehicle, there has to be somebody who's inspecting it or repairing it or thinking about it and checking the sensors, checking the machine. And that is this, I think we're going to see an incredible opportunity for men and women to be in the maintenance and field services business, because that is what's going to be the tip of the spear for all of this innovation that's promised. It's really interesting. Your career has kind of traced this progression of the trends and forces that impact the country and the supply chain specifically. It's absolutely fascinating.
What do you think about gamification on the other side of this? So let me give just a little more
Yeah.
context to the question. So I agree with you that it's going to be the men and women who are mechanics that are like kind of spending time on the periphery of the vehicle because there might not be a driver operator anymore at
Mhm.
some point. However, probably the way that we like to regulate things in this country, there will be human eyeballs on the fleet. So will we see some type of control center that's now one human keeping eyes on 40 vehicles that are driving through? We're seeing it in the forklift industry, but I'm really
This is
curious to see about what your thoughts are on the Class
Yeah,
8s.
so there is a supplemental advanced notice of proposed rulemaking. We call it a SANPRIM in the FMCSA, talking about level 4, which is remote operator, level 4 automation, and level 5 automation, remote assistant. And what that really boils down to is like we need to make rules about how many assets a remote operator can manage, or what kind of training the remote operator can manage. And I say this to anybody who will listen. We live in the most powerful society that's ever existed. You can speak or type, and hundreds or thousands of people will get to know what you think, and it might influence how they end up making a decision. I think
Right.
that when the FMCSA proposes rules, they have not proposed rules yet, but when they do propose rules, anybody, truck drivers, mechanics, dock workers, people like us in the technology space, or podcasters that are lawyers, we should give our opinions, because we can control at least some level of how this goes. We could not stop containerization, even if we wanted to. We couldn't stop deregulation, even if we wanted to. Automation will not stop. It will not stop, but it will have some ability for us to have some insights in this. And the question is unknown. How many trucks can a driver safely manage as a remote operator? No idea. No idea. But
Yeah.
I certainly hope that the public comments and the FMCSA comes up with reasonable rules around that issue.
I agree with you. And I think we're going to see so much of that. So maybe someone who doesn't like to be directly tied to turning the wrench, as you said, we're training the technician today for a job tomorrow. If
Mhm.
they don't like that role, they could still be part of the solution as a remote operator that's
Absolutely.
perhaps
And it
even like working from home.
Yeah, it may only be on like over the road middle mile. It might not ever be LTL. It may not be yard operations. Well, maybe it could. But I think your point is really well taken. Like this thing is marching in a direction, and we can see where it goes. And what'll be anyone's guess, like what the final catalyst is. But I suspect, I mean, in trucking, we know the expenses. The most expensive thing you have is fuel, labor, the truck and the trailer, the assets, the maintenance, the tires, and the insurance. We're going to try to find ways to reduce the cost of labor in some cases, and that is what automation's supposed to do. What I do get encouraged by is that if we move to more autonomous vehicles or more technology enabled vehicles, we're not going to see the same out of service rate that we see with trucks today. Like, you can't have an autonomous vehicle with its 20% out of service rate. You just can't have it. It's got to be at a much, much higher level. So if it means our supply chain gets safer, I'm generally for it, because I don't know that we're particularly safe right now.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of harmonies are going to exist between people who are inventing things. I'm so interested in this upcoming generation to see what they're going to do as technology native folks, and what they're going to build and how they're going to connect that into essentially our supply chain. But one of the things that does concern me, and I could only imagine if I were responsible for a fleet, is what happens when that technology goes down. So we've talked about like the camera side of things, because yeah, nuclear verdict, and even before it gets to any verdict, like getting
Yeah,
that letter in the
absolutely.
mail, getting that knock on the door, that phone call that's like, you're up next, motor carrier, like that's just tragic. And I know that the velocity leadership at the kind of steering the ship, Derek Powell, has been really, really focused on creating a way to keep that continuous monitoring on facility technology or fleet technology at a really reasonable place, because at a reasonable price, because we know that that dollar share within the trucking industry is cut up pretty tight right now.
Yeah, to build off that, so for the folks that don't know my all my background, so my began as a lawyer. What I did was I was a defense attorney for trucking companies in catastrophic accidents. Like, the worst day for a trucking company was my Monday, my Tuesday, my Wednesday, my Thursday, and my Friday. It was, and sometimes on the weekends. And it is really difficult to deal with any type of accident, even if you're not at fault, because you're still in litigation. You're still part of this calculus. And if you can find ways to get everyone home in the same condition they leave, that's investments you want to make. And I do think there's some interesting comments. I'll just kind of mention one of them here. I do think ultimately the drone operator of a remote truck is going to be the future. The remote operator who can take control of the vehicle. I think that'll be something we certainly see. And I do think the question is going to be, to your point, Beth, like, where do we go in terms of regulation? Like, how do we think about how many they should be able to do? Can they do it from home? Are they subject to drug and alcohol testing? All of these are massive questions that our industry has not answered yet. And we will get something eventually when they make a proposal. Now, as we kind of wind down, Beth, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave with the folks that have been tuning in today or listening to the podcast?
Well, I think that probably the most common question that I'm asked, and perhaps other people are asking it too, is like, where do I go to get more information about the technologies that I don't even need, like, don't even know exist, don't even know to ask questions to? There's a variety of different people. There's technology partners. There's companies out there right now that are so interested in answering those questions. Velocity is one of them. They're not the only one that can answer technology questions, but we're one of them. We touch it all, we see it all, we have conversations about it all. We piloted it, all of it. So, like, give us the opportunity to come join shoulder to shoulder alongside and like hear what those pain points are. But there's no silly question. Perhaps we just need to start doing webinars all the time that just like expose one particular technology and say, here's the use case, here's where it helps, this is how it works. If you need more information, call. But I mean, there's such a dedicated team of folks that work in the Velocity ecosystem that are really dedicated to making these companies that people care about succeed.
Well, Beth, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. I will make sure to put some links in the show notes for folks who want to follow you and connect with you. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's so good to see you, Matthew. I'm glad you're back. Congratulations on a super successful week that you had. So
It was
you were dropping
monumental.
news. There was so much to celebrate from the periphery. I see you're wearing a shirt with cactus on it, I believe.
I'm always here to relax. That's the Armchair Attorney. It's a relaxed type of law firm. Yes,
That's
I
absolutely
appreciate it.
perfect.
Well, have a great rest of your weekend. We'll talk to you soon. That's it, everybody. Thank you again for joining the Armchair Attorney podcast. Look, I love this business. My grandfather hauled grain in central Illinois. My father was a roadway guy back in 1976 before starting his company fixing stuff for FedEx Ground. I can't get out of this business. No one can get out of this business. We're stuck here. And as we get stuck, we want to have interesting conversations and connect with people who can add meaning to our lives and help us safely deliver freight on time and undamaged. As always, it's been a great week. I had a chance to go to the Transportation Club of St. Louis. I hope you go to your traffic clubs. Really great places to meet shippers, brokers, and motor carriers. Always thanks to my good friends over at DAT. Dial a Truck. Ken Adamo, Carrie Jablonski, I'm coming for you. The Proof of Delivery podcast, guest host right here. We've done 11% of all Proof of Delivery podcasts. That's 1 out of the 9 that have been out there. And of course, our friends over at Genlogs. Genlogs, cameras, lights, cameras, action. Where is that truck? Where is that trailer? Where have I seen that truck before? That's a different MC number on the side. What's happening here? Genlogs has cameras all across the United States, helping find and discover freight with more intelligence than anyone's ever seen before, setting a new standard of care for fighting freight fraud. That's a hard one to say, fighting freight fraud. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We'll see you again next time, probably, maybe. That's how it goes. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.